Hey there, what's up? Tim Warner here. Explain it like I'm 5. Are you familiar with the subreddit, ELI5? I haven't been able to get confirmation, but I think that the name of that subreddit is sourced in the famous quote that's mostly attributed to the physicist Richard Feynman, but also I found it attributed to Albert Einstein. Now, both of those guys were contemporaries, and I could imagine both men being capable of saying it, but personally, I think that it was Richard Feynman based on all of the lectures that I've studied from him, and I would encourage you to check him out if you're not aware, because why Richard Feynman is my teaching hero is because of his humble attitude toward knowledge and teaching. In preparing, I actually, as you know, don't like to prepare for these little YouTube videos because the whole point is to just speak off the top of my head in a spontaneous way. But I did a little bit of research because I wanted to track down the origins of that quote. What is the quote? I guess my big mistake is that I haven't given the quote. The quote is, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, then you probably don't understand it well enough yourself. That's the most common formulation of that quote. And in Reddit, the ELI5 subreddit is where people ask questions about sometimes very complicated stuff, but they say, explain it to me like I'm 5. Explain a difficult concept to me in simple language that practically anybody, including a child, can understand. That's really what we're talking about. So rather than get in the weeds about who said it when, why is that expression meaningful to me as a technical trainer, and why do I think it should be meaningful to you as an information professional, even if you're not a teacher? Well, I've found in my experience in information technology, being able to translate between business speak and tech speak is super valuable, and it's super appreciated by particularly the non-technical audience. For example, in my day job at Pluralsight, I've begun hosting regular office hours sessions for our salespeople, because what I've noticed over the years is that a lot of the salespeople have come from non-technical sales fields. Totally understandable. But now here they are trying to sell IT training, but they don't have the relevant vocabulary to be able to talk shop with their prospects. Basically, they just furiously write down what the prospect says, and then they try to find somebody who can translate between business speak and tech speak. It really slows things down, and I think it results in a lot of lost sales opportunities. So by conducting these office hours, I'm providing a safe, welcoming, non-judgmental space for these folks to ask any question, no matter how embarrassing. Why? Well, because revealing your ignorance is a vulnerable thing to do, and it can feel embarrassing at times. And my value that I bring to the equation is that I can take any technical subject and boil it down so that a non-technical person can understand. Very valuable. You know who gave me a really nice education in that? My daughter. She's 13 now, so I guess I've got 13 years of experience. I tried to teach her when she was 1, but until she got language, that was a different kind of communication. But certainly, having a kid, and particularly more when they're going through the toddler why. I always took Zoe's whys very seriously and continue to this very moment. But one reason why I think she's so skilled with artificial intelligence is because her curiosity took her into those realms at a very young age, and she wasn't afraid to ask the question why, and I wasn't afraid to ponder. And if I didn't have sufficient knowledge, I dove in and got smart on the technology, and then came back and explained it to her as a 5-year-old in a way that she can understand. I can't overstate what a valuable skill that translation ability is. Now, how do you develop that ability? Well, it's not for everybody because, we could get into the weeds of discussing aptitude versus learned. I think I've mentioned this in past YouTube videos. Somebody would have to have, it seems to me, some native aptitude for singing before they could use maybe training to really fine-tune their singing and be perfectly on pitch. But some people have a very hard time hitting any or recognizing any cohesive or valid pitches. So it's one of those things. And likewise, some people have more or less of a gift to communicate clearly. Some people, and I won't mention names, although I'm very tempted to, will take such a circuitous route to get to their point. It's a challenge for me in that kind of situation because I'm really the other extreme, as you know. I like the shortest distance between 2 points. Now, sometimes, yeah, especially when translating technical subjects to a non-technical audience, the shortest distance between 2 points is going to be too technical. That would be fine with a fellow practitioner. But when I'm, say, explaining artificial intelligence to a layperson, by definition, that explanation, it may not be circuitous, but it's going to be longer than just the straight line distance between those 2 points. And that's keeping in mind the audience. I think it's critical that if you want to develop this ability to explain stuff to a 5-year-old, to think about, it's going out of my head. Here we go, the hazards of spontaneity. Got it, yes. It's important to keep the learner or the conversational partner in mind. Remember, I remind myself now that if I'm explaining something, I'm not just yapping to hear myself talk. I'm not yapping to try to impress you. That old saw about if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with BS, right? That's not my bag. No. It's about putting myself in the learner's shoes. That helps me when I make that translation because if I've got, say, a fellow 50-something-year-old person who's non-technical, and then I've got a 10-year-old child, let's say, and I'm going to attempt to explain artificial intelligence or generative AI to both of these people simultaneously, there is a challenge, then I'm calibrating at 2 levels. I'm putting myself in the shoes of the 50-something and thinking about their, making some assumptions about where they're coming from. And then I've got a 10-year-old, and I think back to when I was 10, for instance. That's the easiest thing for me to do. It's the notion of student-centered instruction. And fortunately, when I was in college, that was drilled into me pretty heavily from the start. And in my first teaching job at Executrain, fortunately, they reinforced that focus of, as an instructor, it's not about you. It's about the learner, being a learner-focused instructor, and making sure that my lessons are as tailored as possible to that audience, to that student. So if any fellow technical trainers are watching this video, you'll chuckle that rarely do you get a group of learners who are all at even generally the same level, especially with IT. You wind up with some smarty pants over here, and some want to show off how much of a smarty pants they are, and others that may be so intimidated or overwhelmed they've gone mute. And so a good challenge for the teacher, the technical trainer, is to take that into account. Recognize it. See, that's the principle of student-centered teaching. Recognizing that I'm here for them, so I need to tune myself as best as I can to their skills. Now, I just thought of this. I do most of my training in a live online format. Excuse me, that's not right. I do most of my training in a pre-recorded context where I'm not with learners live. So that, again, poses its own challenge because I have to essentially make up personas in my head of where my students are at. Now, I think I'm pretty accurate at doing that because I also do live teaching. And I was explaining this to my non-technical friend Matt last night, as a matter of fact, that I really need both contexts. That is, the live training where I have immediate feedback from learners and they're challenging me with things that I hadn't yet thought of or challenging me to think of things in a different way. That makes me a better instructor when I'm doing my recorded stuff because I don't have immediate access to learners. On the other hand, in the pre-recorded training, I'm able to get so deep into the subject matter and buff up my skills, as it were, that I've got a lot more content to bring to the table when I am in a live situation. So both of those, the live and pre-recorded teaching contexts, are wonderfully symbiotic, and they fit together like peanut butter and banana. That's an Elvis Presley reference. So that's a little bit on my thoughts on Explain It Like I'm Five and some tips on how to start to develop those skills. Besides putting yourself in the other person's position, there's all and paying attention to them and not making it about you and not making it about ego. I'll finish with Explain It Like I'm Five is rooted in curiosity and just the wonder of ignorance. And that if I'm asked a question or if I'm asked to explain a concept and I'm not able to get to that level of understanding to where I can explain it to a 5-year-old, that to me is a prompt and a challenge for me to focus in and sharpen the saw on that particular whatever the subject matter is, so that the next day I can come back and explain it to a 5-year-old. Okay, 10-minute mark. That's it. See you. Bye.